Namaste. International Monetary Fund has released World Economic Outlook April 2024 report in which it is quite positive about India's growth rate for the year 24-25 and also for the year 25-26. Then it is also positive about India's inflationary targeting and the war against the inflation. At the same time, it is also positive about the global output and global growth rate while also giving the positive story about global inflationary tacklings. We must also understand this comes up with certain cautions. But however, this report does not explicitly mention about the warlike situation in Iran and Israel or between Iran and Israel, which may bring about a supply chain hampering disruptions, and probable rise in the energy prices, which is quite advantageous to the global economy since few months. Let us look at this report and why it is positive on India and how this report has been deciphered. Let us understand. So IMF, this report is released by IMF. Oftentimes, this question will be asked in many exams: Who releases World Economic Outlook report? Yes. For the year 24-25, the current fiscal year, that is the current fiscal year, in India's GDP is estimated to grow at 6.8%. Earlier in January, they had released the similar report in which they said the growth rate would be of 6.5%, probably because of incoming or probable coming of stable government and probable conditions favorable to good monsoons. Last year, the monsoons were not so good because of El Nino effect, but IMO and others estimate that this year it is going to be a very good monsoon year for India. Probably that is also one of the condition, and stable government and probably the reform measures by the government, and then the impetus given by the government for exports and self-sufficiency. These are the things which are leading India to grow at 6.8%, and probably for the year 25-26 the growth rate may come up to 6.5%. So that's an important observation with respect to India by IMF. Then about global economy, he says that, or the report speaks that global economy has been remarkably resilient. Resilient is adaptability, acceptance, and changing to the patterns. This resilience comes in the post-pandemic world. He's also speaking of post-pandemic world where the supply chain and supply system was shocked. All other systems were shocked. Production and productivity were very low. Now the report says that globe has come out of that time period and now it is moving towards a, a period wherein the growth is given the prominence. Growth and inflation targeting are going hand in hand, and it has defied the expectations of stagflation. What is stagflation? On one hand, there is high inflation and high unemployment. This kind of scenario is not there because it was estimated for the simple reason. During the pandemic, governments pumped up the money into the hands of public to give them the nudge or create a sense of demand, wherein that will adversely affect over the period of time. Due to high demand, inflation will automatically rise. When the automatic high inflation rises because there is no probable demand, continuation of demand, or probable structural changes, unemployment will also rise. That is a condition of stagflation. At the same time, on the other hand, the extremity to other end, it was also considered that there could be a possibility of recession wherein the economic output becomes very low. So both things were anticipated by economists, but of course it was the it was defied, and now the world is moving towards a better position even after looking at the situation of Russia's invasion on Ukraine. Then there was post pandemic supply disruptions. Then there was a subsequent global energy and food crises. We have seen due to war and other aspects that this situation is ever emerging, And most importantly, the energy crisis, again, as I said, Iran Israel war could endanger the situation in Red Sea, Persian Gulf, elsewhere also. That impact can be very harmful for economy. Then it is also because whenever there is a high inflation, government will move towards, or central banks will move towards the policy of monetary tightening, hawkish monetary policy. They will increase the interest rates. Thereby what happens? It will lead to recession for the simple reason interest rates will go up. Everybody will start, putting their money into the banks. Nobody is ready to take the loans because the loan rate will be very high. Economic activity will come down. Recession kind of situation may occur. So this cycle will continue. Whenever there is a high inflation, monetary tightening will continue. And whenever there is a monetary tightening, recession kind of situation may emerge. And to do away with recession, central banks may again come up with a policy of reducing the interest rates. That is how the norm has been. Now, after that, when we see that India's output will be 6.8% very positive, whereas probably IMF is very not so clear about 6.8%, but with respect to India's growth rate, because of the governance, because of the reforms, and because of the potentiality of this nation, probably 7 to 7.5% can be expected because of different data available or produced by the government of India and its departments. Now it is about the global output. Global output, they say for the year 2025, it will be 3.2% after bottoming out at 2.3% at the end of 2022. Why it got bottomed out? It is because of pandemic. Now slowly it is and gradually it is getting recovered to 3.2%. Now there is an important message. Of course, IMF means it is run by Western institutions or Western nations. It will always think of their interests. Therefore, it has also suggested that whenever India is growing at 7.8%, right, growth rate, uh, then, sorry, the projected moderation in India's growth rate from 7.8% last fiscal year was due to tightening of monetary policy. Last fiscal year, it was 7.8%. Today or this year, it will be 6.8% because they say because RBI is increasing its rates, repo rates, and business activity will hit hard. Why RBI is increasing the interest rate? Again, to contain inflation, to help the public. Then, because of tight monetary and fiscal policy, he's saying that market it is not in favor of market. Therefore, the interest rate rise will hamper the growth. That is what they are trying to say. At the same time, they also mean to say that because of the hawkish or because of the tight monetary policy, that inflationary kind of situation will subsume to 4.2% by next year. That's an important message. At the same time, IMF has a very important message to the countries or to any budding economists that whenever you have the strong growth rate, whenever the economy is growing in a very high margin, or it is in the comfortable position, ensure that you bring in lot of reforms. That is what he's trying to say. In this case, he's saying ensure that there will be a lot of foreign investments for which reduce the rules or more than the rules, reducing it. He's trying to say, or IMF is trying to say, that there should not be hawkishness in the rules. That flexibility should be maintained. That is what they're trying to say. Growth could end up higher than expected due to strengthening private demand. That is the most important factor I was emphasizing on, that even though IMF is saying 6.8%, it could be more than that also. Then, also an upside comes from potential for reforms. Of course, whenever there is upside in the economy, the reform is anticipated. There is a chance for the government to take up the reform. For example, demonetization was brought in when India's growth rate was very good, at very good condition. If demonetization was brought during the COVID times or elsewhere, or during when the growth rate would have been 4%, 3%, then think of the condition, think of the scenario, how bad it would have been. Because the economy was very good, there is an ambit for the government to bring in lot of reforms and lot of measures. Then, it is also potential for reforms that would liberalize foreign investment and really boost exports. So at the end of the day, we need a very good export or exporting environment, ease of doing business and other aspects. And when I say export means we do need to produce more, that will also say that we need to increase the jobs and labor force. Then it is very strong outlook. That is the bold words they use. Very strong outlook for India. For global economy, IMF expected median headline inflation to ease from 2.8% at the end of the year to 2.4% at the end of 2025. Most indicators point out to soft landing. It is not that harsh landing will occur, soft landing will occur. Then, another important fact that this report is pointing at is that the scaring thing, the effect of scaring. There is an important concept of scaring, which means the gap in the output compared with pre-pandemic levels. So before pandemic, the economy was rising very high because of the pandemic. There was a standstill, or it was in the negative side, but there was a gap, right? Before pandemic the growth rate is so much, and after the pandemic if the growth rate becomes this much or growth and output becomes this much, there will be a gap between these two things. So in order to reduce the gap, that is what the IMF says, that scaring effect is scary. So now the scaring thing or the gap is getting reduced, which is a very good thing. As it is a good thing all over the world by and large, but it is also not a very positive scenario in low income and developing countries. That means there is a gap still increasing. The IMF called the vigilance, citing recent inflation numbers that were pushing upward, and most of the slowing in inflation was due to falling energy prices. Why today we are in the very good condition? RBI and other also forecast that inflation is in a better condition. Why, sir? Because we see that the falling of energy prices. Recently, we saw that petrol and diesel rates got down, and our dependency on Iran is also reduced. Therefore, nothing to worry. I mean, there is a ambit and there is a scope to worry, but not in sense of severity. For the simple reason, we have diversified our energy baskets, and we have diversified the countries from where we will be getting the energy sources. Most importantly, when there was a crisis between Ukraine and Russia, whole world got shocked, and most importantly, Europe was hit badly, whereas India took the advantage. I'll not say advantage; they utilized that situation, which created a sense of tension across the world. But whereas India was in very comfortable position to handle that situation, that would be a better phrase to say, and we did not hit very badly, or the adverse impact was not so bad for India. Similarly, even in case of Israel and Iran war, we have the cushioning condition, and we have made probable preparations to avoid the adverse impacts from that war. However, there could be supply chain challenges if the war breaks out full fledged. Then, but service inflation remained high. That means a very important thing, because tourism, hospitality, education, and most of the service sector got booming. When the demand is increasing, when the supply is increasing, probably more than the supply, when the supply is scarce and demand is increasing, the inflation is bound to rise. On one hand, we have, inflation of energy is getting reduced, whereas inflation in the service sector is increasing. That's a caution by IMF to India as well as to the world. Hope this discussion was useful. The most important fact, World Economic Outlook April 2024 has been released, and it is quite positive towards India's growth story, and it is appreciating the remarkable resilience by the world economy to the adverse challenges. Earlier, it was called "We are sailing in the turbulent world." Now, the term of resilience has been used, which is on the positive note. Hope that the upcoming fiscal year, be more positive to India, and probably we will be attaining like 7 to 7.5% of the growth rate because of stable government, probable stable government, probable good monsoon, and all our reformatory measures will yield into a very beautiful growth story for India, which will be a model for world. Thanks a lot. Hope this discussion was useful. Namaste. Dhanyavad. Jai Hind. Shreya Gasranade.